Dear Cancer, there is a moment today when someone close to you says something ordinary and it lands wrong. Not because they meant harm, because your emotional radar is running hotter than usual and one part of your chart is quietly amplifying every signal. You might already feel it. A slight tightness before a phone call. A pause before you answer a text. The sky today has a reason for that, and it involves a comfortable planet sitting in an uncomfortable position. But there is something else happening underneath it, something financial and something deeply personal, and by the end of this you will understand why today asks you to protect one thing before you give away another. The bigger picture. Teddy's emotional undercurrent traces back to the moon, moving through Libra and settling into your fourth house, the part of your chart tied to home, family, and emotional roots. From a Western tropical lens, this placement asks you to slow down and tend your inner foundation before facing the outside world. But the moon is not resting quietly there. It forms an opposition to Saturn sitting in your 10th house of career and public responsibility. That is the tension wire running through your entire day. One part of you wants stillness. Another part is being pulled toward a deadline, a demand, or some kind of public obligation. Meanwhile, a separate lunar reading places the moon in Virgo, and this version of the sky suggests obstacles that test your resolve rather than your emotions. Different sources are describing slightly different lunar weather, and that is worth naming honestly rather than blending together. What both agree on, though, is this. Today is not a passive day. Something is asking for your attention, and how you respond matters more than what actually happens. There is also a longer story running in the background. Jupiter's placement in Leo has been shaping your financial instincts for a while now, encouraging a slower, more disciplined approach to money rather than any quick win. This is not the flashy kind of luck. It is the kind that rewards repetition, patience, and a willingness to keep refining your strategy. That backdrop matters because it quietly influences almost everything else you will feel today, especially the parts involving money and generosity. Love. Here is where today gets emotionally layered. If you are in a relationship, there is a real possibility that a private, cozy moment together gets interrupted, and it can feel like a message you were not supposed to receive. Maybe you are mid-conversation, maybe you have just settled into something warm and unhurried, when work, family duty, or some outside expectation pulls your partner's attention away. It is easy to internalize that shift. It is easy to think the interruption means something about how much you matter to them. You may have noticed this pattern before. Something soft starts building, and then life reaches in and interrupts it at exactly the wrong moment. But here is the detail worth sitting with. That interruption is not a verdict on the relationship. It is bad timing colliding with a real structural demand, the same Saturn opposition shaping the wider sky today. The affection was real before the interruption, and it remains real after it. The mistake would be turning one obligation into evidence that love comes second. It rarely is. It is simply competing against a planet that does not know how to wait. If you are single, this same energy plays out differently. The pull toward home and emotional safety might make you less interested in performing for attention today and more drawn to connections that feel grounded rather than exciting. That is not a lesser kind of interest. It may actually be the more accurate signal, since Libra's presence in your emotional house tends to favor genuine warmth over dramatic sparks. Career. What begins as an emotional interruption at home may actually reveal something deeper about how you are currently valuing your time at work. The same Saturn opposition asking for your attention in relationships is also the one applying pressure through a deadline or a public responsibility today. The instinct might be to respond immediately, to prove you are reliable the moment something lands in your inbox. Resist that instinct, setting a realistic response time, rather than reacting the second something appears, actually protects your credibility more than instant availability does. Saturn respects structure, not urgency. Showing up with a clear head an hour later often reads as more competent than showing up frazzled immediately. This is where the emotional foundation you protected earlier in the day becomes useful. Calmer starting point gives you steadier footing when the demand arrives. Money. This is where two very different threads of your chart actually meet. Jupiter's slow, patient influence in your financial life has been asking you to build wealth through discipline rather than impulse, and that discipline gets tested today in an unexpected way. You may feel the pull to spend generously on someone you care about, maybe a thoughtful gift, maybe an unplanned gesture meant to show affection. The energy today leans toward caution here, not because generosity is wrong, but because your intentions and someone else's comfort might not align. You might recognize this if you have ever given something that made a friend feel obligated to match it, rather than simply appreciate it. A gift meant to express love can accidentally create pressure, especially if the other person feels less financially flush than you. Keeping the playing field level protects the relationship more than the gesture itself ever could. This is the quieter, more mature expression of the same patient financial energy Jupiter has been cultivating in you. Restraint, here, is its own form of generosity, health. Here is the part of today's story that ties everything together. You have likely been carrying more emotional weight recently than you have fully acknowledged. And today's Libra moon sitting in your home sector tends to stir nervous, unsettled energy rather than calm reflection. That specific kind of restlessness can quietly drain your physical reserves even when nothing dramatic is happening. If you have been reaching for a second coffee or something sugary to push through the day, this is worth noticing. That kind of stimulant tends to spike the very nervous energy the moon is already amplifying, leaving you more depleted by evening. A steadier source of fuel, something like protein or whole grains, tends to hold your energy more evenly through a day that is already asking a lot of you emotionally. Crowded spaces may also feel more draining than usual right now, simply because your emotional antenna is picking up more input than it can comfortably process. There is no need to force social stamina today. An earlier night, quiet hydration, and a slower pace are not signs of falling behind. They are the actual strategy today's chart is quietly recommending. Some Vedic practitioners might associate this kind of restorative period with lunar remedies suited to an individual's specific chart, though that kind of prescription genuinely requires personal analysis rather than a blanket recommendation. What is universally safe and genuinely useful is simply honoring the slower rhythm your body is asking for today: home and family. The pull toward home is not incidental today. It is the emotional center of gravity the entire sky is built around. Spending time with family, revisiting old photos, or simply sitting somewhere familiar can feel unusually restorative right now, almost like recharging a battery that has been running low without your noticing. If you are partnered, this might show up as a genuine desire to share something small and meaningful: a meal, a memory, an unhurried conversation. If you are single, this could mean enjoying time with people who already know you well, rather than seeking out something new. Either way, the theme is the same: depth over stimulation, familiarity over performance. This is also where an earlier tension resolves itself. The interruption from work or obligation that pulled attention away earlier in the day does not erase this foundation. It simply means the foundation needs protecting a little more deliberately than usual. Travel and spirit. There is no major travel signal in today's sky, but there is a quieter kind of movement worth noticing: the internal kind. The same restless lunar energy that asks you to slow your body down also invites a bit of reflection on where your emotional energy has been going lately. Picture it like checking the foundation of a house before adding another room. You do not need dramatic change today. You need an honest look at where your emotional resources are flowing and whether they are going toward things that actually restore you. That kind of quiet self-check, even 5 minutes of it, tends to matter more on a day like this than any external plan would. Lucky signs. If you are looking for a small anchor today, turquoise carries a gentle, calming resonance that pairs well with the day's emotional themes. The window between midday and early afternoon tends to carry a bit more ease and clarity than the rest of the day, making it a reasonable time to handle anything requiring a level head. People who feel emotionally steady and undramatic tend to be the most comfortable company for you right now. Tay's guidance. So here is what today is actually asking of you. Protect your emotional foundation first, whether that means a slower morning, a quieter meal, or simply resisting the urge to answer every demand instantly. From there, handle the responsibility that shows up, whether it is a deadline, a request, or someone else's expectation, with a clearer head rather than a reactive one. Watch your generosity today, not because your instincts are wrong, but because keeping things balanced protects the people you care about more than any grand gesture would. And when that quiet moment of interruption happens, whether at home or somewhere else, remember it is timing, not truth. It does not diminish what is real underneath it. That misread interruption from earlier, it was never a message about where you stand. It was simply Saturn asking for a little patience, nothing more. Once you see that clearly, the rest of today becomes far easier to move through, one steady, grounded step at a time.